So many superhero sequels get announced nowadays that it's hard to keep track of them. Need a refresher on the heroes and anti-heroes that'll be returning to the big screen? These are the upcoming movies you won't want to miss. With superhero movies no longer being surefire hits at the box office, it's understandable that studios may want to stick with what's worked in the past to a large extent, which is probably why there are soon to be 2 cinematic Batman franchises running concurrently. As part of the DC universe shepherded by James Gunn and Peter Safran, a new Batman film is in the works called The Brave and the Bold. At the same time, 2022's The Batman was a wild success that saw Robert Pattinson perfectly embody the Dark Knight. Thankfully for fans, The Batman will be getting a part 2.
People need hope. To know someone's out there for them.
Like the original, The Batman Part 2 will be written and directed by Matt Reeves. Naturally, speculation has run rampant as to which villain or villains Reeves will choose to pit against Pattinson's Caped Crusader. Mr. Freeze is a popular theory, especially with the sequel apparently taking place in the winter. That said, he might be a bit too fantastical to adapt into Reeves' more grounded version of Gotham. The Court of Owls and Hush are more realistic villains that Reeves could adapt, giving Bruce Wayne unique challenges that he hasn't encountered on the big screen before. The Batman Part 2 will sweep into theaters on October 2nd, 2026. In the 1990s, comic book adaptations were a novelty rather than the law of the land. Films like Batman Forever and Blade managed to break out into the mainstream. But 1997's Spawn wasn't as lucky. The movie was widely panned by critics, and many fans of the character were put off by the fact that the violent comic book received a PG-13 rating rather than an R. It's been nearly 2 decades, but it may be finally time to right the wrongs of the past by bringing Spawn to the big screen yet again in the upcoming adaptation King Spawn. It doesn't sound as though this will be a direct sequel to the first Spawn film. Instead, it'll be more akin to a reboot than anything else. That said, the details of its development should be enough to get Spawn heads ecstatic. They have Blumhouse, the production company responsible for horror hits like Insidious and Megan, to thank for the anti-hero's return. For now, it sounds as though King Spawn is simply a working title, and the movie won't actually adapt the comic book run of the same name. But now that R-rated comic book movies have proven themselves to be box office winners, it's the perfect time to let Spawn run wild.
Hell yeah!
Released in 2005, Constantine could have easily been lost to the annals of time. It grossed $230 million at the global box office, but received mixed reviews from critics. Unlike Spawn with its PG-13 rating, Constantine was rated R, but it still didn't go as far as it could have. Director Francis Lawrence explained to Collider how he and his team set out to get a PG-13 rating, but was slapped with an R regardless. He recalled, "It's like if we were gonna get an R rating, I would have made an R-rated movie. We got a bit screwed on that front." Due to that lackluster reception, it appeared as though a true R-rated Constantine film would permanently remain out of reach. But with the original movie gaining a cult following over the years, talk of a sequel has been around for a while. Ultimately, rights issues held up a prospective Constantine 2 for years, but a follow-up now seems to finally be in motion. In 2022, it was announced that Constantine 2 was in development with Keanu Reeves returning as the grizzled exorcist. Lorenzo di Bonaventura, a producer on the original Constantine, shared the sequel script. "I haven't read it yet. Akiva Goldsman wrote it, and I'm super excited." Post-Avengers Endgame, Marvel Studios' output has been a bit of a mixed bag. For every Spider-Man No Way Home that fans adore, there's a secret invasion that the internet collectively piles on. It's a good thing for fans of martial arts movies that 2021's Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings falls into the former camp as a highlight of Marvel's recent offerings. Starring Simu Liu as the titular hero, it balances an emotional story with impressive fight scenes reminiscent of classic wuxia films. It's taken a while to get the ball rolling on a sequel, but Liu clarified in April 2024 that Shang-Chi 2 is definitely still happening. It might, however, be in need of a new director, as Shang-Chi's destined Daniel Cretton is in talks to bring his talents to Spider-Man 4. It's possible Cretton could film both movies depending on release dates, but that would certainly be quite the undertaking. Marvel's multiverse saga will conclude with Avengers Secret Wars, and there are theories that Shang-Chi's Ten Rings will potentially tie into the multiverse. Releasing another Shang-Chi movie before Secret Wars, which is slated to come out May 7th, 2027, would make the most sense, but it remains to be seen when the character will surface again in live action. With Destin Daniel Cretton likely to be in the director's chair, Spider-Man 4 is moving full speed ahead. It's understandable that Marvel would want to get one of their most popular heroes back on screen as soon as possible. But following the success of No Way Home, there were reports that Marvel and Sony were fighting over what direction Spider-Man 4 should take. While such reports should be taken with a grain of salt, Marvel apparently wants a grounded story, while Sony is skewing more toward another multiverse installment that could bring back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield as a variants of Peter Parker. With supervillain Null appearing in Venom: The Last Dance, it's possible Sony is setting up a massive multiverse-level story with a god of symbiotes factoring in. After all, writer and director Kelly Marcel teased to IGN, the King in Black is way too powerful for one and done. At the same time, Kingpin waging war against New York vigilantes in Daredevil Born Again would also be an ideal plot thread to explore in a New York-centric Spidey movie. Given Spider-Man 4 and the high likelihood that Peter Parker will play important roles in Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars, Tom Holland is going to be very busy very soon.
I'd rather just stay on the ground for a little while. Friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Somebody's gotta look out for the little guy, right?
You'd be forgiven for missing Bloodshot when it came out in theaters. It was released to the public on March 13, 2020, less than a week before Cineplexes closed as the COVID-19 pandemic began wreaking havoc across the globe. It obviously couldn't make a ton of money, and Sony promptly made the movie available to stream on March 24th. Plenty of people seem to have checked it out at home, because later in 2020, it was announced that Bloodshot 2 was in development. Vin Diesel will return as Ray Garrison, a soldier killed in the line of duty who's brought back to life with incredible strength. The project hasn't been cancelled in the years since, but there also hasn't been much word on its progress or lack thereof. Diesel is working on the next chapter in the Fast and Furious franchise, so it may just be the creative team is waiting for his schedule to clear up before moving full speed ahead. The first Bloodshot had ample unanswered questions that a sequel could explore. But even if Bloodshot ultimately made its money back through video on demand, it's not clear whether people will care if and when the sequel finally comes out. It's hard to overstate the influence of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse on modern animated projects attached to big franchises. One can definitely see that all over 2023's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, which fully utilizes its unique animation style to tell a story that would have been far more difficult in live action. Paramount must have been pleased with the reception, as the movie spawned a Paramount Plus original spin-off series called Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the sequel tentatively set to come out on October 9th, 2026. Director Jeff Rowe will be back to helm the follow-up, while the ending of TMNT Mutant Mayhem sets up what the sequel will be about. After Superfly fails to take over the city, his gang of mutants decide to team up with the Turtles, but now Shredder has arrived in New York. Mutant Mayhem 2 will likely involve the Ninja Turtles going up against their most iconic foe, but who knows what other surprises could be in store.
Did you get that, April? Did you film that?
Sorry, am I supposed to film all the stuff you do? Because a lot of it's dumb.
Disney and Pixar revealed at 2024's D23 Expo that The Incredibles 3 is in the works, with Brad Bird returning to direct. A third installment probably shouldn't come as too much of a surprise, considering that The Incredibles 2 grossed over $1.2 billion worldwide. There isn't much known about the project just yet. One would assume that the cast of fan-favorite heroes, including Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, and Samuel L. Jackson, would return. Given the long development cycles of many animated projects, it could be a while before Incredibles 3 finally makes it to theaters, but there's already a ton of hype around the film. As for the plots, it's possible that Bird could utilize a scrapped idea from The Incredibles 2. He spoke with IndieWire in 2019 about other ideas he had, revealing, "I did have a superhero story about an invading artificial intelligence. I will find a way to do it somewhere else." That somewhere else could definitely be The Incredibles 3, especially with AI being such a contentious topic, and it wouldn't be the Parr family's first time fighting that particular threat. Sony Pictures intended to get a Sinister Six movie off the ground back in the 2010s. This is why the ending of 2014's The Amazing Spider-Man 2 ended with Green Goblin talking about assembling a team, accompanied by shots of villainous technology that hinted at the future inclusion of Doc Ock and Vulture. That movie, originally to be set within Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man universe, was ultimately scrapped, but according to rumors, Sony hasn't let go of its Sinister Six dreams quite yet. It's good to stay skeptical on any Sinister Six news, but speculation in 2023 suggested that Sony wants a Sinister Six movie featuring the cavalcade of Spidey villains who have starred in their own solo movies: Tom Hardy's Venom, Jared Leto's Morbius, and Aaron Taylor Johnson's Kraven the Hunter. In February 2024, another rumor emerged, suggesting that Sony may want to produce an animated Sinister Six film instead. It's unclear if that would be connected to the live-action Spider-Man villain films or be a standalone project. Nothing has been confirmed at this time by Sony, but if all those spin-offs don't lead to a Sinister Six team-up, then why was Michael Keaton in Morbius?
I'm still figuring this place out, but I think a bunch of guys like us should team up. Could do some good.
Intriguing.
There are a lot of Marvel projects that are seemingly active and in the works, like Shang-Chi 2 and Thor 5, but there aren't a lot of details publicly about them at this point. Another prospective film that falls into that category is Doctor Strange 3, and which would make the most sense for Marvel to get started on as quickly as possible. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness ends with Clea taking Doctor Strange on his next big adventure to correct an incursion. In Multiverse of Madness, it's explained that an incursion is when two universes collide with one another and begin to deteriorate, which will more than likely factor into the events of Avengers Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. It's the type of apocalyptic threat that would play well in those films and bring the multiverse saga to an epic conclusion. It would therefore make sense for Doctor Strange 3 to arrive before those Avengers movies, or maybe between them. Additional rumors suggest that the plot of Doctor Strange 3 will adapt the Time Runs Out comic book storyline and see the master of the mystic arts deal with the fact that he's a common denominator when it comes to the destruction of universes. With the multiverse at Strange's fingertips, the possibilities are literally endless.